Hey, everybody, and welcome to another lecture in the Social Psych lecture series. This one is on aggression. So, we're going to be talking about different forms of aggression, what aggression really is, where it comes from, that sort of thing. And then talk a little bit about rape culture to end this discussion. Okay. So, what is aggression? What is the harm caused by it? What are the sources? So, we'll talk about a few of the sources. This is not exhaustive. Okay. We're going to talk about reducing aggression. Okay. At the end. So, what is aggression? Well, is it accidentally injuring someone? Is it working tenaciously to try to sell a product to a customer? Is it biting someone on the neck? Is it swinging a stick at someone but missing? Is it swinging a stick at a piñata and hitting a person instead? Hurling insults at someone? Deliberately failing to prevent harm? Murdering for money? Hiring someone to break a competitor's kneecaps? Hitting others while in a rage? Hitting a pillow while in a rage? If you answered yes to all of these, then you're right. That's all aggression. That's all aggressive acts, whether they were physically harming someone or not. Although some of those are pretty wild, like murdering for money or hiring someone to break a competitor's kneecaps. You didn't actually do the kneecapping break, but that's still a very aggressive move, Tanya Harding. Okay? So, physical or verbal behavior intended to hurt another person or any other living thing, right? Or actually, not even just living things, but inanimate objects as well. Piñatas, for example. Who does not want to be hurt? Hey, look, it's the ABC model of aggression. ABC model of aggression. So, the affect part. A, anger. Okay? Anger. Behavior is the violence, and cognition is, generally speaking, hostility. Okay, this is the ABC model. There are two types of aggression. Instrumental aggression. This is inflicting harm to obtain something of value, so a means to an end, some sort of job that you have to do, breaking somebody's kneecaps. And then there's emotional aggression or hostile or effective. Okay. This is inflicting harm for its own sake. The means and the end do need to coincide. The means and the ends are the same thing. I want to inflict harm because I want to inflict harm. So instrumental aggression is using a weapon. Emotional aggression is using words to be harmful. Okay? To just wrap somebody up and into a little ball and laughing about it. Okay? So what is the harm caused from aggression? Well, it can take multiple forms. It can be physical harm, okay? Immediate or lasting feelings of pain, suffering, injury, or death that lasts. Non-lethal physical, psychological trauma, overgeneralized anxiety, hypervigilance, sleeplessness, irritability, self-blame, post-traumatic stress disorder, and serious harm or death. So that's non-lethal physical. That's not going to kill you, and it's mostly psychological. But you can also be collateral damage. So this is you are not the intended target of the harm, and yet you suffer from the harm because you are nearby or you are related or something like that. A lot of harm is collateral damage, to be sure. Sources of aggression include biological sources. So your genes are interesting. So the idea here that I want to share is that there is a particular identified gene. It's called the MAOA gene. And there are apparently two forms of it, long form and short form. Okay. What the MAOA gene is supposed to do is produce an enzyme that helps metabolize certain neurotransmitters. Okay. And the short form is what is linked to aggression in non-human species. So chimpanzees, gorillas, tigers, etc. In one study, researchers had a sample of men and tested for this gene, and 37% had that short form. They also categorized men as either having been abused in childhood or not. Then they measured their violent crimes. So the MAOA short form of the gene did not predict violence by itself. However, boys who had the gene and were abused were 3 times more likely to have been convicted of a violent crime by age 26. They were 12% of this particular sample, but they were responsible for 44% of total crimes in that sample. So they were an eighth of the people in the sample, and yet that eighth was nearly half of the crimes. So there is a gene by environment interaction. So is it nature or is it nurture? It's the interaction of both. The other thing about biology is testosterone. So all humans make testosterone. But male humans tend to have quite a bit more than female humans and other sexes. And so, yeah, you see a lot of aggression associated with testosterone. Okay. Prison populations tend to have higher levels of T overall. Rowdy frats tend to have more T on average than non-rowdy frats. When trans men are transitioning, in addition to body hair dropping body fat and lowering the voice, testosterone also creates the issue of having to deal with more impulse control and temper issues. However, we also know things that inspire anger also increase testosterone levels. So this is a bidirectional relationship, right? So it's not just that testosterone increases aggression also increases testosterone. So it's back and forth, right? So insults can increase somebody's testosterone level. And so there's an association with testosterone, not a causal relationship. So just because you have a lot of testosterone doesn't mean you're an aggressive person. And this same goes for women who also have lower levels of testosterone, but also may have higher levels than the average woman. Okay, they won't be necessarily more aggressive than any other woman. Okay, so this is a correlation, and then the MAOA gene is a gene by environment interaction. So the gene by itself doesn't make somebody more or less aggressive, but if they have issues in their environment that changes the way the MAOA gene works, then you have that issue. So the frustration aggression hypothesis. So imagine you are frustrated by something. Okay. Now, have you ever thought to yourself, what is the definition of frustration? I always say I'm frustrated, but what does that mean? Well, frustration is being thwarted on the way to a goal. So being prevented from reaching a goal. And so the frustration aggression hypothesis suggests that being thwarted on the way to a goal increases the probability of an aggressive response. In one study, children were either delayed from playing with toys, so frustrating, or allowed to directly play with them, which was the control group. Those children who were frustrated were more destructive with the toys than the control group children. So, does frustration always lead to aggression? This is a great question. The neo-associationistic account of aggression doesn't necessarily agree, and this is the neo-associationistic account, right? So you have an aversive event, things like frustration, but also pain, heat. So frustration would be blocked goals, but things like heat and pain are also aversive events in this model. Okay? Those things will lead to anger, which is the emotion associated with frustration, right? So you get perceived injustice, and then anger increases arousal levels. Just think of anger from Inside Out. When he gets super angry, fire comes from his head. That's representing the sympathetic nervous system kicking itself into high gear, right? That anger then leads to the behavior of aggression, okay? So physically attacking someone or something, or harming someone emotionally, some sort of relational thing like spreading rumors or something, okay? So that's another way to suggest frustration leading to aggression. Neo-associationistic account, it's hard to say, includes this anger level, right? So sometimes frustration won't lead to anger, therefore won't lead to aggression. So that's the difference between the two. Romeo and Juliet. I pray thee, God, Mercutio, let's retire. The day is hot, the Capulets abroad. And if we meet, we shall not scape a brawl. For now, these hot days is the mad blood stirring. So even Shakespeare knew that aggressive acts increase during the summer months and then just fall away in the winter months. So you have more uprisings, more domestic disturbances, more rapes, more assaults. These are, of course, correlations. But heat really does make people really agitated. Makes people really agitated. Okay, so let me give you the one of the reasons I think why. So this is a personal opinion, but it seems right to me. So when you're cold, generally speaking, we have the means to increase our warmth. We put things on. We can put as many layers of clothing on to prevent our skin from feeling cold air temperatures, right? We bundle up. But when it's really, really hot, you can get naked and still be really, really hot. You can't take off your skin. And so there's a limit to how much relief you can get from disrobing if it's really, really hot. There's only so much relief you can get. In winter, you can pile on them clothes and be like, I am nice and toasty. I'm under this blanket. You can't do that when it's hot outside. And so what does your body do? Well, it starts getting agitated. And when it gets agitated, your body temperature increases. And so the more agitated you get, the more hot you get. And it's still hot outside. And so you're sweating, and then you're trying to get, and then so the rage just builds. and you're like, ah, and then you turn green and start smashing. Another situational source of aggression is oh wait, no, this is still hot. This is baseball, because I enjoy baseball. Here's Albert Pujols getting plunked when he was a Cardinal. He's getting hit. And you can see that when the temperature is 90 degrees and above, more batters are hit. More batters are hit. Okay. More often. Okay. And this is especially true on the unwritten rules of baseball. If a batter is hit by the opposing team, then you can bet that they'll hit a batter later in the game, because, turnabout is fair play in baseball. You hit me, I hit you, and then everyone gets warned, and then, it's becomes no fun. Or benches clear, or brawls happen. Oh, I miss baseball. Okay. So that's another piece of evidence for heat. Hot heat. Okay. Now, this one is an interesting one. Okay. This is an additional situational variable, and it has to do with the presence of guns. Right? So the task was write instructions on how to use the object. Okay. And the independent variable was either a nonviolent toy or a pellet gun. So they had to so people had to write instructions how to use either one. Okay. Nonviolent toy or pellet gun. And they measured testosterone through saliva samples before and after handling the toy or the gun. And then they had to do a hot sauce test. Okay. So increases in testosterone were significant for the gun. They didn't increase for the toy, though. Okay. Grams of hot sauce, though, is really interesting. So people who had to handle the gun and write instructions for how to use the gun ingested more hot sauce than those who utilize the toy. And so the gun increased aggressive behaviors, doing more harm to my mouth with hot sauce, and this was increasing my tea. So this is called the weapons effect. The weapons effect. The mere presence of weapons, the description of weapons, and the visual representation of weapons increases probability of aggressive behaviors. I'm going to put more hot sauce for the next person. They're going to love it. Bloop, 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 bloop. Here you go. Enjoy your mouth burning. Now, what are other sources of aggression? Well, social sources, social learning theory from Bandura in the 1970s. Now, this one's pretty famous because this is the Bobo doll set of experiments. And the idea behind Bobo was that Bandura didn't believe the behaviorist perspective at the time. He said, you know what? I don't think behaviorists understand that aggressive behavior is modeled. Just because we watch somebody perform an aggressive act like boxing, we don't get that cathartic release that was suggested by behaviorists. He said, no, kids learn from that because if it's rewarded, then the kid will learn that that's reinforcing. Okay. that's reinforcing. And so they will also act in that way. So here's a poor drawing of Bobo. It's an inflatable clown is what it is. It's an inflatable clown, and I have a video for you. You can actually see the Bobo doll. So it's an inflatable clown, and there's a weight at the bottom of it. So the center of mass is toward the bottom of it. And so you can, if you hit Bobo, he will come right back up. Okay. So essentially coming back for more. Okay. So there were 72 boys and girls that watched adults play in a playroom, and they watched them play with Bobo. Okay. And they then measured the kids playing with those toys and how they acted toward Bobo. And they just measured physical aggression and verbal aggression. So here is a video of that.
My initial research and observational learning centered on the social modeling of aggression. In our experiment, preschool children observed an adult model beat up an inflated Bobo doll in novel ways. She pummeled it with a mallet, flung it in the air, kicked it repeatedly, and threw it down and beat it. And these novel acts were embellished with hostile remarks. The children were then left in the playroom that had a variety of toys. Now, the children who had observed the aggressive modeling adopted much of it. They even invented new ways for attacking the doll. Children who had not observed the adult model were less aggressive and never hit the Bobo doll in the novel ways that were modeled. The children who had been exposed to the aggressive modeling showed an increased attraction to guns, even though the adult model never used them. At the time we did this research, it was widely believed that seeing others venting aggression would drain away the viewer's aggressive drive. As you can see, exposure to modeled aggression is hardly cathartic.
Hardly.
Televised violence has four major effects. It teaches aggressive styles of behavior, weakens restraints over aggression, desensitizes and habituates viewers to human cruelty, and shapes viewers' images of reality.
Yeah, that's a lot, right? So the idea here is that consuming violent media will increase the aggressive response of the viewer. Now, the research is still out on that, and no, violent video games do not make you a potential school shooter, or any other kind of shooter. So that there is no strong link to those things. The Avett Brothers have a song called "Bang Bang," and it's about how they think that all of this consumption of violent media is leading to people to take up arms in that way and go on shooting sprees. And that is one of the ills of the United States. And while it's a catchy song, and I do enjoy it, the message misses the point. Because access to guns is really where the struggle is, not in using those guns. Okay? Access to guns. So, another bang bang shoot 'em up movie? Why not? It's not going to increase your levels of aggression to go shoot up the bad guy. Having access to guns, though, and the weapons effect does. All right, gender differences. Physical versus relational aggression. Okay. So, men and boys are more likely to engage in what is called physical aggression. Okay. That is actually harming each other. Like these two high school boys right here. Man, somebody's going to get punched in the face. Although he's winding up his punch and his elbow is up. This dude could totally like block it, and he'll end up punching the blocker. It'll hurt real bad. Men are arrested more often for violent crimes than women are. Girls and women tend to participate in what is called relational aggression. Harming somebody through their relationships or social status. Okay, so are they biological or social? So we need cross-cultural research to help us with this, and cross-cultural research finds that young male write stories with more violent solutions than women do in each culture. Males are consistently higher than females within a culture. Although males were consistently higher than females within a culture, females from some countries had higher levels of aggression than males from different countries. So Australia versus Korea. Okay. So the females in Australia had higher levels of aggression than males in Korea. Okay. So cross-culturally, these are issues, right? So is this nature or nurture? Well, it's probably both. Do not buy into the trope of boys will be boys. Boys should not be harming each other like this. Rough and tumble play, while innocuous, can lead to more violence. Other cultural issues include cultures of honor. So let's talk about the American South and their insistence on maintaining the honor of the Confederacy. The idea of the culture of honor in the American South is that its members' strong concerns about their own and others' reputations. So there is a sensitivity to slights and insults and a willingness to use violence to avenge those perceived wrongs or insults. Okay. So this is found all over the place, where hurting animals is where many people make a living, because hurting animals is tough, right? Herders are susceptible to losing all of their wealth in an instant if animals are stolen. So here's a quote for you. From an early age, small boys were taught to think much of their own honor and be active in its defense. Honor is, in this society, meant a pride of manhood in masculine courage, physical strength, and warrior virtue. Male children were trained to defend their honor without a moment's hesitation, lashing out against their challengers with savage violence. Yeah. So, northern United States was settled by farmers from England, Germany, Netherlands. Farmers, agrarian, okay? While the South were settled by Scottish and Irish settlers that had herding systems, okay? And so you end up with this difference of opinion about what aggression, even in the verbal sense, can lead to. Okay? Felony-related murders in non-South, these are murders, right? So felony-related murders. So felony-related murders are murders committed in the commission of another felony. Okay. Not a big difference there, but argument-related murders, quite a bit more. We're talking almost 3 per 100,000 more. Okay? And this is among white males. No other demographic is represented here. Okay. In a classic set of studies, and I want to share with you a classic set of studies, students at the University of Michigan were brought to the lab. They had to walk down a narrow hall past someone working at a filing cabinet. Filing cabinets in hallways. When they passed the Confederate, who was the person working at a filing cabinet, the Confederate bumped into the participant and muttered, "Asshole." Asshole. And so they measured things like testosterone, anger in the face, how hard they shook the experimenter's hands. Like, these is all anger-related behaviors. How close they got to the big burly guy before they deflected. Like, this is a lot. And you can see here that people were characterized by their southernness or their northernness, right? And on the y-axis here is distance at which subject gives way to Confederate after the muttering of the asshole. So how close are they? How close are they? You can see here there's a break in the scale, so from 0 to 40, and then every 10 from there. And so in the control, the southern subjects identified by the U of M gave them quite a few inches of leeway. This is as much space as they possibly could inside this hallway. Northern subjects kind of just did whatever. But when you look at, so a good 5 to 6 feet of space. But in the insult condition, you see a massive decrease. So this is about 30 inches. It's about 3 feet. So they moved from 110 inches to close to 30. They moved in. They were like, "I ain't giving you any room because you called me an asshole?" No, sir. And you have comments like these from even women from the South. "It's true us country girls are devils when it comes to revenge." So the culture of honor, I want to say, is not just for men in the South. It also includes women. Do not slight women because they will come after you, according to this idea. Now, I do want to talk about rape culture, like I said. Okay, rape culture is rape is forced sex acts. Okay, so sex without consent, but it is also a physical assault. Okay, both men and women, according to Peggy Sanday's anthropological archival research of 156 cultures, both men and women are the victim of rape, but it's largely perpetuated by men on women. And so, globally, 20% of women experience sexual violence in a relationship at some point during their lives. It's a huge range. 3% in a place like Cambodia, 59% in a place like Ethiopia. Okay. There are, according to Peggy Sanday, there are 17 unambiguous rape-prone societies, 17%. But then on the other side of the coin, a large number of societies are rape-free, 47%. And then in the middle, 36% rape present in remaining of them. So unambiguous, rape free in the middle, rape present. The United States is one of the 36% where rape is still present. It's also used as a ritual, part of a marriage ceremony or rite of passage into adulthood for males. Sometimes it's part of a gang initiation in the United States. It's a threat to maintain gender inequality. So, the point here, it is not coming from a biological drive, but rather a conditioned response. Sexual violence is no more inherent to masculinity than football. I want that quote to sit with you. Sexual violence is no more inherent to masculinity than football. And here are the rape myths. Everything you hear about rape, blaming the victim is a myth. Okay? She asked for it. It wasn't really rape. He didn't mean to. She wanted it. She lied. Rape is a trivial event. Rape is a deviant event. And you have the statements from these where she asked for it. When women going around wearing low-cut tops or short skirts, they're just asking for trouble. That's a statement, and you ask, do you agree 1 to 5? If a woman doesn't physically resist sex, even when protesting verbally, it can't be considered rape. So, scale of 1 to 5, agree, disagree. Men don't usually intend to force sex on a woman, but sometimes they get too sexually carried away. She wanted it. Although most women wouldn't admit it, they generally find being physically forced into sex a real turn on. Again, these are statements on a scale from 1 to 5. Do you agree or disagree? And you can find out whether or not somebody has explicit attitudes. Explicit attitudes about rape. Okay. So these are all myths. Okay. These are all victim blaming myths. Nobody should ever be, no one should ever be raped, but no one should ever be blamed for their own rape. Okay. I think it's a pretty crucial distinction. Don't you? Don't you? Last thing, how do we reduce aggression? Well, again, this is kind of like reducing prejudice a little bit. It's very difficult, but societal interventions have to be part of it. So, improving quality of life will reduce frustration. Controlling guns, weapons effect. This is where the Avett brothers miss the point. This is where Bandura's work is really important, but also sort of misses the point. Punishing aggression. So using operant conditioning. But in multi-systematic therapy, to be effective, punishment must be severe without modeling aggression, delivered promptly before aggressors benefit from a change in their behavior, perceived as justified, and administered consistency. The American legal system rarely meets criteria 2 and criteria 4, which means that it's not delivered promptly. I don't know if you know this, but it takes a while for somebody to be tried for murder. It takes a long time. So it's not delivered promptly. And 4, administered consistently. Well, I can go on and on and on and on and on about how this isn't consistent across things like race and SES. mandatory minimums and all of that stuff, while they seem great, mandatory minimums, everyone gets the same sentence for the same crime, does not get levied the same way. So 2 and 4, the American legal system does not do. Okay. Reducing or reframing media depictions of aggression. So how is the aggression portrayed and then consumed? But then we also have to have interpersonal interventions, right? Improving parental care is one of those things. Strengthening social connections is another one. And enhancing empathy. I think that's number one. As if you can cultivate empathy in another human being, I think you have won. I think you have won life. Okay. It takes a lot of work though to enhance empathy and teach empathy to someone. It takes a lot of work. So that's going to be it for this episode of the lecture series. Please leave your comments, suggestions, and feedback down below if you have any. And until the next episode, bye.